You're on mute. You're on mute.
We're going to have to skip our normal intro tonight because the video file is not found. I will see if I can fix that while we're on air, so we at least have our outro. But you know what? Here we go. Welcome back,
There
everybody,
we
to this
go.
week's live episode of the DCL Duo podcast, brought to you by My Path Unwinding Travel and our good friends over at the WDW magazine. The DCL magazine, I think Danny helpfully pointed out, there will be another, well, it'll now be a DCL specific magazine, no longer an issue of the WDW magazine. It will be its own subscription coming out. We will share details once we know more, but be sure to head over to wdw-magazine.com and you can order anything in their store with code DCL Duo, all caps DCL Duo, for 10% off. And big thank you to Stephanie, Danny, the whole team over at WDW Magazine for sponsoring our bonus and live episodes. But we're also welcoming Karen from My Path Unwinding Travel this evening. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you. I thought maybe I could sing the intro for you, but I could some fireworks.
It puts me in the right frame of mind, you know?
Just
Like,
pumped up.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I must have deleted a file somewhere, and now I gotta go find it again. But you might see me disappear for a second, so I can grab my laptop and find those files and send them over, so that we have the outro music at least. But Karen, excited to have you on. We're gonna be talking a little Adventures by Disney, but before we dive in, Sam, Disney News of the Week, round it up.
We've got some news that came out this week. One was an announcement by DCL announcing officially that the Haunted Mansion Happy Hunt, which is a new game that's being offered on the Treasure and the Destiny, has launched on the Treasure. It actually launched, I think, about 2 weeks ago, but I think it was kind of a soft launch. You know, they were doing some testing with the folks on board, and now has officially launched on the Treasure. My initial reaction was I thought maybe it was a replacement for the Uncharted Adventure, which of course we know and have talked about in the past has been plagued by lots of glitches. But my understanding is no, it's not a replacement. It's in addition to. So you can play both games on board. Of course, the Uncharted Adventure, you need a phone that has the DCL Navigator app downloaded on it. Whereas the Happy Hunt, you need a Disney Band or Magic Band Plus. And so not a regular Magic Band or a regular Disney Band, but the Plus version of it, which is the one that has to be charged. And so you can play that on board the Treasure currently. And from what I'm hearing, it is likely to be ready for the Destiny maiden voyage, although there's of course no guarantees there. But I'm excited for this new game. I've heard from a few listeners who happened to be on board at the time it launched who were giving positive feedback about it. I don't know if you guys are excited about it. Karen, are you excited to play? Maybe we'll run around on the Destiny maiden and play it.
We are going to run around. I am really excited. Those kind of games bring me back to like my kids playing Magi Quest with the wands all
Oh
around
yeah.
Great Wolf Lodge. So I think it's really fun. Of course, Midship Detective Agency too, but I think it's going to be super fun.
Yeah, super exciting. All right. Well, the other piece of news, I'm reporting this because the Cruise Globe has it. And so Brian, I can't hear you.
Now you can. I was going to say something about the new Happy Haunts game on board. I know a couple of people out there in the community who were saying, "I can't believe they're making you buy a Magic Band to do this." I get it. I hear you. I'm not a fan of the Magic Band, but I will tell you, I think the Magic Band is a superior technology for what they're trying to do on board with this than the phone tech that they were running on the Uncharted Adventure, which is so glitchy. So, you know, remember, you can buy a Magic Band and still use it at the parks and all of that sort of stuff. So if you're a park goer, that'll help you out. But yeah, I
Yeah,
hear
you
you.
only need one Magic Band or Disney Band Plus,
Yeah,
for you, right? Like that
yep.
you could use at the parks and you can use on board DCL and you can even use at Aulani to open your room door and pay for purchases. So it's one of those things where yes, it's annoying. You have to spend another 35 to 50 plus dollars, but it's the one time I think it's worth it probably for the game. And I agree with Brian. It is probably likely to be less glitchy because it's operating off of RFID in the bands instead of having to operate through Wi-Fi, and so that's going to be hopefully less of an issue. Anyway, the other piece of news, we mentioned we had on our show a couple weeks ago. We had Emma from Emma Cruises as well as Matt from the Cruise Globe talking to us about their new product, the Cruise Globe, the app, and all the different products you can buy. They have cards that you can buy. They have maps that you can purchase to hang on your wall, all that sort of stuff. But what's really cool is they will tell you anywhere in the world a ship is sailing, like where they're sailing and where they're headed and when they're supposed to dock. And right now, they are saying that the Disney Destiny is going to arrive approximately at 14:45 hours, which is 2:45 p.m. on November 2nd in Port Canaveral. So that means she's headed to Port Canaveral before Fort Lauderdale, which is pretty cool. I don't think that Disney has announced that. I don't, at least I haven't heard any official announcements about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident they have not announced it, but it's out there.
Yeah, it's out there because they have to, they have to have like a ship's manifest, right? Like they have to tell the port they're going to, hey, we're going to be there, and here's approximately when we're going to be there. And so that information is put into websites like the Cruise Globe. And yeah, I don't know. It's pretty exciting. It's going to be here soon. And then, of course, as we've told folks, we're going to be headed on November 9th. We're headed down to Fort Lauderdale to board on November 10th for a media preview cruise. We're super excited. Karen's going to be on a different preview. She was invited for the same one that we're on, but was unable to make it. So she's going on a later one. Karen, what date are you going to be on the Destiny?
I will be on the Destiny November 16th to 19th before we join together on the Maiden. And that's because I'll be on the new Celebrity Excel preview cruise, the 14th to the 16th. So I'll have another new ship to report on. So lots of great stuff happening in November.
You're basically doing back-to-back-to-backs, but with like a day in between each time.
I sure am. I'll actually...
Oh, go ahead, Karen.
I would say I'll actually be getting off the Excel and going right onto the Destiny. I don't know I don't know how the Ubers are going to work in between the port terminals, but at least they're all in Fort Lauderdale, so it worked out. So yeah.
I was just going to say, for everyone out there watching, expect just a ton of stuff to roll out from us starting November 10th about the ship. And so if you are not subscribed to our Instagram account, we tend to just post tons of stories. We're planning to maybe go live for a couple of things on board the ship over on Instagram. So if you're not subscribed over there, head over there. That's where we will post the majority of what we will have to say. Of course, if you're in our Facebook group, we will probably do some consolidated posting there as well. But head over there, and of course, we will have
that posts on Instagram automatically posts on Facebook as well. So posts, reels, and stories all automatically. If we post it on Instagram, it'll post on Facebook. So
yeah, and plan for a live show, a special live show, live edition of the DCL Duo, health permitting, travel delays permitting, Friday night after we disembark the cruise on Thursday. So we'll fly home Thursday, the 13th. We are planning for a live show on Friday the 14th to talk about the experience on board and to share some of our thoughts. And so look out for that. And of course, we'll be on the Maiden and the Thanksgiving cruise and probably have even more to say after that. So there you go.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Awesome. Well, with all of that, we need to talk about Adventures by Disney and your amazing trip to Peru, Karen. Where do we even start? Like, why Peru? What made you decide to book this trip? And then Brian's going to pull up the PowerPoint.
Sure. So my family we are a huge fan of Adventures by Disney. I started traveling with ABD before I was even in this industry, before I was a travel advisor or owned my Path on Winding Travel. And from our very first one, which was 11, 12 years ago, we have fallen in love with the style of travel and the quality of the people that we're traveling with and our guides, just the whole thing. And you all have heard me rave about it before, but Peru is, it's a bucket list destination. It's incredible nature, archaeology, food, art, all of it. And the timing just worked well for us empty nesters. The kids are, grown and flown, and Harv, my husband's schedule, has certain limitations. And that itinerary that week just happened to work. And it was also good timing for my birthday. So it worked out really, really well for us to join this adult exclusive Adventures by Disney.
Awesome. Now, yeah, Karen and I are not quite birthday twins. We have our birthdays one day apart, and we are both Libras, and so we both just celebrated some birthdays. So I love that you got to do an ABD for your birthday, Karen. What a fabulous idea, right?
It was so much fun. I honestly, like, I went into it. One of the great things about Adventures by Disney is you don't really have to plan a lot. And so I went into it. I honestly I had read the itinerary 3 or 4 times. I had reviewed the itinerary with Harb. I had tried to tell my kids about it and my team about it, but I kind of went in like still not exactly sure what we would be doing. Except of course for Machu Picchu, which is sort of on everybody's bucket list.
Mhm.
Um, it was the most jam-packed, fully immersive adventure yet. I've done 7 now, and there was just so much to it. That it's hard to kind of say where to start without being here all night. But one of the picture that I started out with here is our group, and this is the first morning where we were all together as a group, having all arrived at some point the day or two before. The first official day is there's nothing on the itinerary, nothing included except get to the hotel at some point during the day and check in with the guides and go to sleep because you're going to be waking up early to take a flight. And so this was our first group picture in the lobby of the Lima Hotel in Weston. And it just speaks to that first day when you're on a group trip and you're like, I don't know any of these people yet because we didn't.
Yeah, nobody's putting
And
their arms around like the strangers yet because well, eventually
right.
they won't be strangers, but I'm sure that changes over time.
Exactly. Exactly. And there were a few different people. We met 2 couples from Charlotte, North Carolina, actually, where I'm from, that were traveling together, and a few couples from Canada that were traveling together. But for the most part, none of us knew each other. And it's that first day where everybody's like introducing themselves and trying to figure out, how are we going to fit in? And the guides are trying to make sure that, everybody's on time and organized. And so, this is kind of the pre-picture of, before the Disney magic is sprinkled all over the group.
I love that. All right. Well, Brian, let's take us to the next slide. Now, for those watching, we're not going to be doing like day by day. We're going to kind of cover this topically. And so we're not going to hit like every excursion activity that Karen did, or we would literally, I mean, that would probably take like 3 shows rather than one,
Ha-
right?
Exactly.
Karen,
Exactly. So
how long was the trip? Over was it a week or was it longer?
it was a week. It was a week, 7-night trip. Keeping in mind again, day one was really, the arrival day had nothing. Some Adventures by Disney have like a welcome dinner on arrival day. There's literally nothing. But we used it well, and we'll probably talk about that later. Um, but we did arrive late on a pre-night, so on like kind of T-1, and then it was 7 full nights. So I started out with some photos of the hotels. They're not exactly in order. This is the hotel in Cusco. So it was the last hotel we stayed in. The hotel in Cusco was originally an Incan palace, and really well situated, very comfortable rooms, beautiful lobby. We took the time to do a historical tour that wasn't part of the ABD, but during some of our free time, there was an included tour of the hotel. I have the picture of the teas here because tea in Peru is um, very prevalent and important because there's teas for help you with elevation made of the coca leaf, and in Cusco you're at about 11,500 or higher in elevation above sea level, feet above sea level, and you can feel it. So it's nice that they always have the tea available.
Wow, I
And
love tea, so that I would be happy to drink tea all the time, especially tea that's gonna help me with any kind of elevation sickness. That sounds amazing.
yes, and there was another kind of tea called munya that was made of different herbs, that also the hotels tended to have available, and that was more like to settle your stomach or for digestion or just a good tea with different mint and various herbs in it. So yeah, that was our Cusco hotel. If I did this correctly as I was throwing it together, the next slide will be I don't know what, Brian. Yes, this is our hotel in the Sacred Valley. Um, this is a Marriott Luxury Collection hotel. All three hotels actually happen to be Marriott's.
Mhm.
So you don't get points if you're a Marriott member because you're booked through the group, but you can give them your number for any charges or whatever to get points for additional spend. This hotel was phenomenal. It was a beautiful, beautiful hotel in the Sacred Valley, great grounds, large rooms, sitting areas, a huge walk-in closet, great bathroom, um, you know, beautiful pool that we never got to use because we just chose not to spend our time that way, and baby alpacas in the lobby
I
He's
was
every
gonna
so
ask.
evening.
cute.
I was gonna
Oh,
ask if that
the
was a
picture of
stuffed.
you petting the alpaca in the
And
lobby
that
is
is
like
a real alpaca. This is, my little one of my little stuffed ones. But that is a real baby alpaca. And they were the sweetest, softest, most wonderful animals. And you see alpacas and some llamas all over Peru. Um, just
I
ever
want one,
it, we
Brian.
in I mean, I was, it's kind of joking, Daddy, I want another alpaca.
I want
Um,
Daddy, I want an alpaca.
Yeah, I'm
I
I'm with
want one
Trey.
now.
I'm with Tracy here in the comments because when I saw that, I was like, "Is that like a pillow or a stuffed animal? Like that looks adorable." And of course, Beth just says it all with the emojis
it's
right there.
so adorable. And everywhere you go, they have women that are in traditional Incan dress that are like carrying around different age alpacas to, try to get you to take their picture and maybe earn the currency there is called the sol, or, multiples or soles. And but we didn't have to, do that because we had so many opportunities to interact with alpacas and llamas, including in the hotel lobby every night.
So, Karen,
We have a quick question
how many hotels
about
did you Karen, how many hotels did you stay at over the course of the week?
We just stayed in three, and
Okay.
the first one was in Lima just for the night. And then it was so wonderful to get to the Sacred Valley and to stay there for 4 nights. You could
Mhm.
really unpack and settle in. And then, when we were at the Cusco Hotel another couple nights. So that was just really, really a nice pace. Something to look at when you're planning an Adventures by Disney is, or any guided vacation, how many hotel changes do they have?
Right.
Um, because there's pluses and minuses to that. There's reasons for the hotel changes, but for this itinerary, it was wonderful to make this hotel our home base for a good while.
Yeah. Now, for you had one pre-night because you arrived T minus one, right? Did you stay at the
Yes.
same hotel that was your first hotel?
We did. So we stayed at the Westin Lima, which is the hotel that Adventures by Disney uses. We booked that independently from Adventures by Disney. Um, but yet they still did pick us up from the airport, which is a wonderful perk because it was the same hotel. We got there pretty late. On a Sunday night, which was the T minus one. Monday was technically day one of the adventure. And the guides, we had a welcome letter from our guides, and we got to see them in the lobby, and they gave us some tips and some maps how to spend our day, and reminding us what we needed to do for the next morning to get started.
Mhm.
I'm curious,
Yeah.
Karen. I mean, like these hotels probably have some amazing amenities. That pool, for instance, catches my attention. did you find you actually had time to like on your own much, or was this really like a go 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 every day?
Jam-packed, yeah.
There definitely were times that we could have chosen to use the pool or the spa, for example, or there were some times where we had a choice, right? So there was one afternoon on the itinerary in the Sacred Valley. It was a pretty big day already. And they said, okay, if you'd like, you can come into town with us and visit a local market and a local famous pottery pottery studio, or you can just enjoy the hotel. And I think it was probably a few more people decided to go into town, but I can imagine that on the family friendly one, more families would have chosen to stay at the hotel and swim. um, so it really, there were a couple of chunks of time that we had free. But as I did say, there were, this was one of the most um, inclusive, active adventures that I've done. There was
Mhm.
not a ton of time on your own, very few meals on our own, which was, in a way, very nice. So, um, but if you had some time, you could, take a quick dip.
Yeah.
Nice.
Brian, let's go to the next slide. Yeah, we got a great question from Tracy. How many people were on your adventure? And then also, how many guides did you have?
Sure. So we had 30 adults on our adventure, and we had two guides, which is typical of Adventures by Disneyland vacations. We had Mike from the US. He happened to be our guide on our Costa Rica trip, which was over 9 years ago. So it was really exciting to see him again. And then we
Oh.
had, yeah, you don't forget your guides. You really don't. And they may forget us. They have a lot more guests than we have guides,
Sure.
right? But Mike is awesome. We had definitely kept in touch. Harv and him had exchanged things about, paddleboarding or kayaking over the years. Our local guide was Rudy from Peru, and you always have one local guide, and he was amazing. And then for a couple days, we had an additional local guide who sometimes guides for Adventures by Disney or had in the past, and he kind of came on to be our guide, especially for Machu Picchu. So,
Mm.
um, but we had two adventure guides that traveled with us the entire time. So the next few slides that I put together are about food in Peru, and food is always a great topic. And yeah, I will say that the food in Peru blew me away. I mean,
Yeah.
it was so great, and I want to note that Harvey has celiac and is really sensitive to gluten, oats, and soy.
Mm.
And there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things in Peruvian food that can be made with beer, can be made with soy sauce. Thankfully, there's a lot of things that are not real glutinous. Um, but he ate very well the whole week. Um, but the highlight, I have to
Oh,
say, was
yay.
on our first night. The first day that I said it's arrival day, no meals are included, it's just a day to get there. We scored at a reservation at a restaurant in Lima called Central, that in 2023 was named the number one restaurant in the world. And there is lists that are put out there. If any of you have read Unreasonable Hospitality, um uh I'm blanking on the name of the restaurant that book is based on, that they worked so hard to get that ranking of number one in the world. But this restaurant was named number one. So they're now in the Hall of Fame. They still deserve that spot. Lima has several restaurants that are in like the top 50 in the world. I was blown away by the food scene. And this was the most unique, incredible meal. Um, I could, probably talk the whole show about it, but I will just
Mm.
say it was fantastic and beautiful and unique.
What kind of like describe some of the Peruvian food that you had? Like what's it like? Yeah.
Brian,
So,
scroll through to the next slide because the next couple
yeah,
slides
we had,
are just
there's some more
yeah.
food pics from
But if
different
you can
times
open it.
during the week. So of course, pisco is the national like beverage of adult beverage of Peru. It's a fermented grape, and many of you will have had a pisco sour. Um, and then there's fermented corn beverages, one of which has grape in it, which is the one in the purple carafe there. There's a lot of South American wines and coffee. We went to a coffee shop in Peru that is top, I think it was 55 in the world. It was named this year. It was called Three Monkeys in Cusco. I think it was 55 in the world. And I will tell you, it deserved it. It was fantastic. um, Food wise, really, I think the food is incredibly accessible. There's something for everyone because they have a lot of heritage that comes from around the world. So there's a lot of Asian influences. There's a lot of seafood, meats, chicken, beef. There's Italian. Like basically, you could get pretty much everything. And the meals that we served were, a combination of some local flavors like lomo saltado, which is kind of a stew. Made, typically with like beef and peppers and like a stir fry kind of stew. It looks like salmon, but it's more like a river trout, I think is
Oh
what
my
they
God.
called it. Really delicious. And of course, in the Sacred Valley, our guide told me the night before, he's like, "Hey, Karen, ask for the Mickey special at breakfast." And because it wasn't on the menu, but of course I did. So I got a
A
Mickey
Mickey
pancake, I
waffle.
guess.
Oh,
Yeah,
pancake. Yeah.
they called it a waffle, but it really felt more like a pancake. So it was maybe something in between, but super fun. Little taquitos at the hotel bar one night, just because sometimes you just want a
The
burger or something
taquitos. Yeah.
easy. And really, you could get, all that kind of food. But we had such fresh, great variety of food that was beautifully presented, beautifully served, and virtually all of our meals except two were included, and those were once we got to Cusco. And all the meals during our time in the Sacred Valley were included, and they had such beautiful settings for us, outdoor picnics that were catered with tents and flowers and entertainment. It was just really over the top, from the very first welcome lunch to the farewell dinner.
Amazing.
That
Brian,
fish,
let's
that fish dish, that salmon. I'm assuming that salmon, based on the color, looks
no, she
amazing.
said trout. She said
Oh,
it was like
trout.
trout.
Sorry,
Yeah,
trout.
it
Mm,
looks
mm,
it's kind of like a local trout, but so so good. Of course, it came presented like in the foil, and they open it up, and it's perfectly
yeah,
cooked. I think there
there you
might be
go.
one more food pick after this. Here you
Oh,
go.
here
So
we
at
go.
these some of these welcome lunches that we had, um, they served, the meals kind of family style on board. So that was sort of like a deconstructed chicken Caesar on the left, and then on the right are some of the vegetables that they served, including, I don't know if you how well you can see it, but the local corn in Peru is unbelievable. I've never seen corn kernels that big. At first, I thought it was like fake or something else, but the kernels are huge. And apparently, there's so many varieties of corn, let alone potatoes. I think they said there's, depending on who you ask, some will say 3,000, some will say 5,000 varieties of potatoes in Peru.
Wow. Now, we've got a great question from our very own Kaylee in the chat. She's asking, what was the average age of the other adventurers on this trip? Remember, guys, this is an adult only or an adult exclusive, they call them on Adventures by Disney. So, not a family version, but I'm guessing their family version is similar activities and whatnot. But, Karen, what was the age?
Yeah,
What was the age
I would
demographic?
I would say that Harv and I, who are in our mid 50s, fell right in. There was, I think the youngest was the young adult daughter of a mom and her young adult daughter who never found out exactly how old she is, but I would say probably 25 was the youngest. Um, a couple people in their 30s and maybe one or two that were late 60s to early 70 here and there, but most were probably in the 40 to 50 range. Some of it, again, it's an adult only, and it was October. So, if you did an
Right.
adult only in May, as I've done before, you might get more college students, families, with young adults. But it being October, I think it changed the mix a little bit.
And so
Yeah.
before we move on from food, Tracy wanted to know how many of the meals ended up being included versus sort of on your own,
She
if you
said
remember.
she already answered that,
Oh, did
Brian,
she?
all but 2.
All but
Yeah,
Yep.
two.
so
Okay.
of course, breakfast every day, and then the arrival day, besides breakfast, had no meals. Everything was on our own. That's when we got that great reservation. From there, we didn't have to do a meal out of pocket until we got to Cusco for the last days, where we had one dinner and one lunch on our own. Everything else was included. In, and they did a couple of meals where we could eat at the hotel restaurants, but not as a group. So it was after Machu Picchu day, they had a menu at the hotel restaurant, the main restaurant, and also at the bar restaurant, which is more casual. And you could go to either at any time, and you didn't have to eat as a group. And that was also included, which was really, really a nice touch.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. One of the things Tracy's mentioning in the comments is that the age range, she did the Italy adult exclusive ABD, and that the age range was fairly similar to yours. So I think that's a pretty I think you're right. Depending upon what time of year, you might get some additional young adults on some of the cruises, usually in that multi-generational category where you've got the adult children with the adult parents. But I think in general, these adult exclusives
Exactly.
are, a lot of 40-year-olds, a lot of 50-year-olds, and probably some 60-year-olds, and then maybe some active, 70-year-olds, but it
Yes.
kinda
And
splits
I will
that.
say this is a very active adventure. Probably the most intensive walking wise that I have done.
Mhm.
Um, uh, with a lot of elevation, being, at elevation a lot of the time. There's adjustment, all of that. One more food pick. This was the first night. This was kind of our welcome dinner, the first two pictures at the hotel, where they did this traditional meal where they put layers of hot stone and different kinds of vegetables and beef and meats into this oven, seal it up, and let it cook for a while. And of course, there was all kinds of other things that we were served. But I do want to note that in Peru, one of the specialties is guinea pig. And that picture on the right is a town that's kind of famous for their guinea pigs. And every shop has like a picture of a smiling guinea pig or a big statue of a guinea pig. And people come and eat the guinea pig. We were served some.
No!
Um, so yes, I did actually. We went to an Incan bar, which was kind of fun, and next to the kind of main room of the Incan bar was a little like pen full of really cute little guinea pigs all
Oh,
scurrying around,
being
but
fattened
they were
up to
being
be eaten.
they were being fattened up. So if you look closely, that is guinea pig in the picture.
No!
I did
Oh.
try it. I
Ashley's
did
asking,
try
does it
it.
taste like chicken?
Yeah, I feel like I don't know what it tasted like. It was kind of chewy. I just had one bite. It didn't make me ill or anything, but it didn't appeal. I'm gonna also admit, because I was there, I'm gonna admit this. I tried alpaca.
No!
Uh,
No!
oh, I
They're so
did.
cute.
Kaylee's comment
I
No!
sums it
did.
up. Yikes.
Yikes. Yikes. And did that taste like chicken? Or more like, I don't know, like
I think it tasted more like.
beef
like a
or pork
lamb, a
or
lamb
lamb.
or a deer, like or a venison or something like that. But really, I just had
Yeah,
one bite of it. It wasn't something that appealed to me, but I decided, I'm here. I'm going to try it.
yeah.
So,
It's, when in Peru, I
Peru.
guess. Alright, yeah, Kaylee's asking
yes. There
beverages
were
include.
a surprising amount of adult beverages included at virtually like every meal, which was crazy. There were welcome beverages, there were wine, there was cocktails. At some of the meals, they said, okay, you could get like one glass of wine, but then, the next one was on your own. But
Mm,
pretty much at everything, there was always, wine or pisco sour. We had pisco sour demonstrations. One tip when I arrived, you arrive in Cusco from the Lima airport on the first day, and they do a welcome lunch in Cusco before you descend into the Sacred Valley. So you're at elevation and you're having this great lunch and then this demonstration of weaving of alpaca wool. So the first thing they do is they give you a welcome beverage, and I took the one with pisco. There was some without. And then I showed you the pic. They also had wine. So I had a lovely lunch with beverages, and then I sat and watched the weaving demonstration and I started seeing black spots. The altitude was getting to me.
Oh wow.
And, I had read alcohol and altitude don't mix. They
mm.
recommended avoiding alcohol. And of course, I ignored that. And I really did think I was going to pass out for a minute. I stood up, walked to the guide and said, I'm feeling really, off. And he offered to get oxygen. They do have oxygen available, the hotels have it. But I think just walking around and cooling off a little bit, even though it was a little chilly, but I had that wool poncho on, helped clear it. And I never needed anything. And I did take the coca tea, which they said should help. And I think that
Mm.
kind of kicked in.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, lots of great beverages during the week. Great wine.
Just be careful with
Um,
the altitude.
Sam, I'm just gonna
Tra
say I'm just
Tracy's asking, "Would I try it?" I think the answer to the guinea pig is no. I have to there's a question mark on the alpaca.
I'd try both. I've tried all kinds of
Yeah,
thing.
you
I mean,
definitely would try
I would
both,
try
I
them both.
know that.
I'm just gonna
But
tell you
I
right
I
now,
also
though.
I also brought home a little guinea pig.
I don't think I could try guinea pig, especially in front of Nathan. I think he would be horrified. I think he
I-
would yeah.
I'll tell you right now, though. What I would bring home are these two llamas here,
Baby alpacas,
baby
oh my god.
alpacas. Sorry, I can't remember.
There's alpacas, and
Yeah.
somewhere
There's both.
somewhere they taught us the difference between a llama. I think the llamas have the longer
Okay.
Yeah.
noses. Um, yeah, I those are so sweet.
Amos and
Um,
Isabel in our house are in trouble because those look
Yeah.
very cute.
I know our dogs are yeah, yeah.
and
Oh my god.
this slide was an homage to llamas and alpacas. One day, actually, as we were heading back into Cusco from our time in the Sacred Valley, we stopped at a llama farm, and we were welcomed by a shaman and musicians doing like a whole ritual and dance. And I'm going to
So
tell you
cool.
that's a Disney difference because as we were leaving, we saw another tour group come in and they did not have that entertainment greeting them. And the other Disney difference is the fun. And that is that, they gave us, stacks of these grasses to go around and feed them. There was a whole like stall, they were wandering around and super friendly. And they told us that, we were going to have a selfie contest. And so I don't know how clear it is
Yeah,
in the way the
you're
middle
feeding
picture
it with your
rendered. I was calling it the llama and the tramp.
Oh, it's the spaghetti. It's the spaghetti between
Yes, yes. So I thought that should be the winning selfie for the contest.
That's
But
amazing.
uh,
The llama and the tramp. You're the tramp
yeah,
apparently, so
apparently. Um, this slide is an ode to planes, trains, and automobiles because literally this trip was planes, trains, and automobiles. As I told you, the very first, full morning, they took us back to the airport. It was, they make it so easy to, your luggage is picked up from your room, put on the coach, taken off the bus at the airport. You have to check in with your luggage because of security, but they, hand you your boarding passes, they escort you through security. um, they just make it super easy. And then, so, there's a picture of our guide Mike on the coach. Most of the time on our trip in the Sacred Valley, we were divided into two smaller coaches. Um, and in order to navigate the tighter streets and the curvy roads. And then the picture on the left is the amazing train that we took into Machu Picchu. So we really did get planes, trains, and automobiles. And there is a lot of logistics and transportation on this trip to see everything you want to see in Peru.
Mhm.
And another reason to do it with Adventures by Disney is they just, handle it all for you. You just show up when they tell you.
I
Nice.
love that.
Um,
I mean, that's the difference, right? Like, that's people are always like, "Oh, well, Adventures by Disney is so expensive," right? But what you're paying for is this white glove concierge level service, right? Like, where everything's planned for you. They've taken care of all of the details, whether it's transportation or the tickets to get into a museum or the tour guide that's at Machu Picchu or like whatever the reservation is that you need, that's all done. You don't have to worry about any of it. You literally just show up with your passport and then
Ex-
everything. Yeah.
exactly right. Exactly right. And like, you need a recommendation for, for dinner if you have your on your own time, or, want to make sure that your dietary needs are met. I mean,
Mm.
our guides worked really hard to make sure that Harv was taken care of. And at every turn he was not with an afterthought, with like meaningful choices. Um, you know, I really like food kinds of things. I don't know how well you can see this picture. These were salt ponds. You all saw the salt caves in Austria, right? In
Yep.
Austria.
Salzburg. Yep.
These are salt ponds, and it's hard to get the perspective maybe from this photo of how many thousands of individual salt ponds and how long they just go on and on and on for. They're still working. They are fed with spring water, and they all kind of are designed to flow into each other. And then when they evaporate, somebody comes and scrapes it all, and then you can buy lots of salt in the market. Oh, really? Just another one of these things like you wouldn't know to go visit on your own.
Mhm.
It is a tourist attraction, but not necessarily one that you think, oh, I'm going to Peru to see salt ponds. But it turned out to be one of the most fascinating places. And then from there, we hiked kind of back down into the town that day. So it was also just a really cool hike to see the salt mines, from different angles, and, just the nature of the landscape as we went down towards the river. But there was a few people that had some mobility issues,
Mhm.
and they popped them in the van and drove them down into town instead.
I was gonna say, I
Mhm.
remember, to go back to the point you made earlier about, Disney vetting all of this stuff. I remember we had a guest who had done an Adventures by Disney to Costa Rica, and then she went back to Costa Rica on her own, and she was messaging us going, "I really miss the adventure guides for this." So, I mean, they do make things
Yes.
so seamless. And Sam, this reminds me of the salt ponds we
Yes.
saw. I forget which stop it
In
was
the
on our Virgin
Caribbean.
Voyage.
We
Yeah,
were
in the Caribbean. Yeah.
Yeah, we were so there are some salt ponds in certain parts of the Caribbean. I think it was it on Grand Cayman, Brian, where we
Sounds
had the
right.
Jeep tour? Yeah, I
Sounds
think it
right.
was where
Yeah.
when we were in Grand Cayman, they actually have salt ponds, and so they sort of have it marked out, like, whose salt pond is what, and then they go and scrape it when the water evaporates. But it is like one of these things where in Latin America, in the Caribbean, like, that was such a big industry, and in certain places still is.
There's an
Yeah.
entire book
Yes.
written. It's called Salts because it's so important to, human history and life. So there you go.
Yeah, well, and
Absolutely.
food
On
preservation
so
even.
many, food
Yeah.
preservation and it was the currency for a while,
Mhm.
right? The currency of
Yep.
the world. Now it's worth pennies. And apparently they make more on admission fees to visit the salt mines than they do on the actual salt. But the next few slides just highlight some of the various activities and places we went. Everybody knows Machu Picchu, but there's all these other sites throughout the Sacred Valley in Cusco that we visited that are Incan and pre-Incan civilizations. Um, Really cool archaeological sites, beautiful views, beautiful hiking. We were really lucky. The rainy season technically starts November. Apparently, there had been some rain earlier. We had fantastic. You can see, blue skies everywhere. We walked a ton before we even got to Machu Picchu. Like the first, I don't know if I have a picture of it in one of the other slides. The first day of activities after the travel day, we went to the site that, they said, okay, we're going to go up there. It's 250 steps to the top. Now we weren't at the full altitude of Cusco, but you're still kind of high up in the Sacred Valley. And, you know, they said you don't have to go all the way up. There's, plenty to see. You can go up partially and there's terraces and the guides take breaks and tell you, as you're going so you can catch your breath. Um, I did it all. I came home with such a sense of accomplishment because I did all the walks, all the stairs, all the options.
That's
Um,
awesome.
I did it all on my 2 feet. My thighs were absolutely burning before I ever got to Machu Picchu, but I did it. And so it was really, a great sense of accomplishment. Um, so, again, here, just, doing some hikes after seeing some sights, and it's like, okay, you could hike back or we can drive you back. We did do a great whitewater rafting trip. Disney provides your wetsuits, your aqua socks, helmet. They include all the photos that not just the photos that the guides take, but on the whitewater on the river rafting trip, there's guides stationed
Mm.
in other rafts and on the riverbanks taking photos, and all of those are uploaded to the shared site. We got, great photos from them. Harv got great video with his new meta glasses. Um, Super, super fun. I was nervous. I get nervous at these things. I'm not a thrill
Yeah.
seeker,
I
but
would I would be nervous
um,
about this, but I would do it.
yeah, I was nervous, but I would do it. And they do have, each raft has a guide. Um, and one of our adventure guides was in our boat. So there was four of us plus Mike, our adventure guide, and then we were supposed to have, a river raft guy, that's really knows what he's doing. And they were just playing around, and they just pushed us off without anybody. And I was now Harv kind of knows what he's doing, and I think adventure guide Mike kind of knew what he's doing, but I was kind of freaking out. But of course, it was all fine, and he caught up to us and got in and steered us through all the crazy.
All the crazy stuff,
Um,
yeah.
but just terrific. And you get out of the chilly water and you change. They have towels for you, and then they have a spread of food and hot tea and all the great things. And then one of the things that people say is am I going to have enough time to really feel the sense of place.
Mhm.
And on this trip, you do. There were plenty of opportunities to roam and wander on your own, or just explore as we were, okay, we were heading down from the one site and going down into town to meet up with those that had driven down to the music workshops. You kind of get to explore, or the afternoon market tour that was optional. They actually gave us 10 soles each um, in the market, and encouraged us. It kind of made a little competition to see who could bargain and for the most amount of food. So that was really fun. Having some Spanish helped. and there was, all kinds of interesting fun things in the market. And then if you want to find out, I'm not going to say here what we did with at the end of that activity, but if you want to find out the spoiler, I'm going to say you need to message me and I will tell you what we actually did with the food. Because I don't want to ruin the surprise for other people
Nice.
I love
that
it.
might just want to be surprised.
Hey,
And then we also go ahead.
I was to say, hey, Karen, Tracy was asking what was the I mean, blue skies and stuff, but what were the temps like for you?
Yeah, it was, I would say that day was a little chilly. I mean, it was the kind of weather that week where you would start off in the morning with, either, many people had shorts and like, a sweatshirt or a light coat on, and then you start peeling your layers off as the day goes on. We were rafting in the morning and the water was a little chilly and it did sprinkle a little bit on the river, but we were already wet. So um, but
It's
it
like when
was
it rains at Castaway and you're already in the water. Like you're like, I don't care, I'm
right,
already wet.
right. Yeah, I would say that, there were some days that it got up to like mid 70s at times. So it was really pleasant. But in the morning you could wake up and feel a chill.
Yeah.
And then there was another day where we went into another town that has a lot of local markets and artisans, and they just said, "Hey, we're gonna, we're dropping you off here. We'll meet back up in like an hour and a half." And everybody just had time to explore and do what they wanted. And that day they gave us each 20 soles. So that's about $6 or $7. And we each bought a white elephant gift. And that we exchanged in the white elephant game at our farewell dinner. And so that was really fun too.
Yeah, we did do that. It wasn't a white elephant, but it was on our river cruise. So I think this is kind of an ABD thing. They don't do it on necessarily every trip, but on our river cruise, because ours was Christmas, we had a gift exchange as well. And it wasn't when I think of white elephant, I think of gag gifts. When I think of versus a gift exchange, which is just a nice gift, but it's still a small, right? Like a small gift, so something that doesn't cost a lot of
Yes.
money. Yeah,
Yes. They asked us to keep everything Disney rated because,
yeah.
in some of these shops, there's some Incan traditions that are adult oriented, I'd say. But there was a range of things that were kind of funny and fun, and some, and it was really fun. We did the whole swapping thing, and part of the competition was how you wrapped it, because they said it had to come wrapped, and everybody just had to be creative in what you could find to wrap. So we were proud of ours. We wrapped ours in a Kleenex box from the hotel and
Ah,
I happened to have some fashion tape, so we were able to seal it as though and put tissues like on top so it really looked like a tissue box.
Legos tissue box.
Uh,
I just grab my my shaver and head out and find an alpaca and roll it up in some foil. There you go.
there you go. There you go. So this is the money shot of Machu Picchu, right? I mean,
Mhm. Of course.
just such a beautiful shot. And you go up to this one, there's all different everywhere you turn, view after view, and you go up and on one landing, there's literally llamas and alpacas just roaming. I'm like, I don't know where they came from. They're not caged, they're just hanging out with you. Um, but Machu Picchu, there's two ways to get there. You could hike the Inca Trail, which is typically a 3-day hike. You can make it
Mhm.
longer, but hard to make it shorter. um, or you take the train on the single gauge, track that goes in. And of course, we took the train. We were in a great car with dome windows. I had that in another slide. So we had so much, beautiful scenery. You could walk to the very back car, which was right next to us, and take photos. There was entertainment, um, musicians and all kinds of things getting there. Um, they
How
paid
long
for the
is that train
bathroom.
how long is that train ride?
I'm wanting to say it was that's a really basic question. I think it was an hour and a half.
Oh, not bad.
Maybe 2 hours on the way back, because at one point we just stopped, and
Mhm.
I'm not still don't really know why, but it might have been to let another train by. Um, but we had a really fun time on the train between the entertainment on the way there and all the scenery. And then some people in our group, they do include in the car kind of like snacks, like chips and cookies or whatever. But some people, in our group purchased, kind of make your own mimosas and bellinis. um, and then on the way back, there was actually a fashion show that the train people put on to sell their alpaca, some beautiful alpaca coats and sweaters. And pro tip, you think it's expensive, you're going to be like, it's beautiful. And you're like, it's so beautiful. And then you look at the price tag and it's pricey. But when we went to the alpaca farm the next day, I think it was, they had some of the same items and they were up to 50% more expensive
Oh
than the
wow.
train. So, that was kind of shocking. A couple people had regret. So, I would say now that I saw it, go ahead and buy it on the train if you like something. But
Wow.
um, this was, we had a guide, we had a really you have to have tickets to Machu Picchu. It's timed entry, and
Mhm.
you have to have a specific circuit that you're traveling on. And so we had a really great circuit that we were able to do. You have to bring your passports to Machu Picchu. That's how controlled it is. But the guides just made sure that we were really well prepared and, shepherded us all in, found the best photo spots for us, really shared a lot of great information, had a great pin moment in Machu Picchu. Just, really, really informative and stunning. And, this is, one of the modern wonders of the world. And it was really great to be able to see.
Yeah, and for those
Well,
who
and with
don't,
Machu
for
Picchu, you can't just show up. Like, you have to have, as Karen said, like, that's one of the things that even if you're not going with Adventures by Disney, you've gotta, like, have this booked with the correct guides, and they've got specific, as you mentioned, specific circuits that you have to be booked on and all of that.
Yeah. And once you get to the train, you still have to get up. And so, some people that it would be a big, big hike to hike up from the train and like the little base town that has like kind of arisen since the discovery of Machu Picchu over 100 years ago. But again, ABD had, the buses waiting for us and, to take us up the mountain, all the switchbacks to get to the base, the base entry for Machu Picchu. Then there's still more stairs just to get in. And then, of course, the whole way is, steps and a lot of I'm, not going to sugarcoat it. It was, I was tentative. It was a lot of uneven rocks, some loose gravel, some handrails, um, but an amazing experience.
can I
Brian,
just
this,
hey Karen, can I just
go
say one
ahead.
thing for folks out there who may not know? You'll see in the middle of the screen here the pin. So when Karen said there was a pin moment at Machu Picchu, the ABD gives you like a pin for each like stop along the way. And so yes, Karen's displaying her lanyard with all of her pins. So that's a little special added touch that ABD does. But before you go into this slide, Karen, I want to ask, like, how crowded were some of the places that you went? Did it feel touristy, or did it feel like you were mingling with the locals? Like, how was the crowd situation?
I think definitely the day that felt, kind of the busiest and the most chaotic was Machu Picchu Day. We took a very early train, so it was less busy getting to, into the train station and onto the train. But when we came off the train at the end of the evening, it it was really jam-packed full of people. That's just, the way station for everybody. All the hikers and the tourists and everything, and, and a lot of locals. And I think it might have been a Friday night too, which also, made it very vibrant. But otherwise, as we were going through Machu Picchu, there were other people there, and there were times where we had to wait a moment to get the prime spot for a photo. Um, but we were a pretty big, we were 30 people, and so we were probably the holdup more than anybody else. So we're really not other big groups like that going through. There were definitely some people that were spending an inordinate amount of time getting that perfect Instagram shot. Like, we tried to be respectful, get your shot, move on. But then we realized too, there's a million places to take a photo, especially once we got up to the area that I showed with the llama, and then this picture on the left with the guides. Like, we spent quite a bit of time there, and you could kind of really walk around and take lots of photos. And then as we were heading back down, there were just a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
It strikes me maybe the reason your train stopped, because we learned this in Alaska, is they stopped occasionally to pick up hikers along the route and then
ah,
take them down. So they might have had to have wait for somebody who had scheduled a pickup of some sort. So that could also
Or
be.
or
yeah, I
trains
don't.
passing
Or
too,
yeah, well,
because
yeah,
as
that's
you
what she
mentioned,
said. Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
because they're
Yeah,
they can't be both passing because they pass so closely. You can't have them both moving because they might actually like bang into each other
So,
with the movement.
people always ask us
yeah.
about Disney touches on ABD. So I see this clearly a
That's what
local
this slide is
chef
about.
taking her, yeah, taking his
Well,
hat
there's
off.
Mickey hands, there's a
Great.
Mickey pin, and then there's a little Remy under a chef's hat. Yeah. So
Yes.
tell us
And so,
about some of
I
these.
put I put this slide together to answer the question, how Disney is Adventures by Disney in Peru. And the answer is, it's basically what you see on this slide. That was it. The guides brought the Mickey hands up to Machu Picchu, which was really fun. The pins are all Disney themed. We've got Donald on the Andean Majesty, and Machu Picchu has Goofy on it, and so the pins are Disney themed. And at the hotel in the Sacred Valley, our chef that was demonstrating some, ceviche and the lomo saltado, at the end of his demonstration, whipped off his chef's hat, and there was Remy underneath. And then he had a box that looked like a box that you would present tea in, but had all the pins in it. So
Oh, fun.
that was really it. Now I'm going to say mostly everybody on the trip had some kind of Disney affinity, had done a
Mhm.
Disney cruise or were DVC or had done other ABDs, but there were a few that had not and were really just on it because it was a great itinerary and they heard good things. I think there was one day on one of the buses that, we did some Disney music trivia, but it was more often on the bus that, we had like, Fleetwood Mac playing or something, or some, Peruvian music, or so really very, very minimal Disney theming, and then you saw the Mickey pancake that you have to kind of ask and know about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that that's, I think with Adventures by Disney, it's a light touch of Disney, the sort of Disney's magic sprinkled in, but it's not like a lot of in your face Disney. Now, of course, the ones that are family friendly are going to have just a little bit more of a sprinkle probably than the adult exclusive ones. And then, and that doesn't really, I don't think, change whether you're on a river cruise versus a land-based one. It's a little sprinkle with a little bit
Uh,
more with kids, a little bit less with the adult exclusive.
exactly, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah. Do we have another slide? Ooh, look at
Oh, that's
that.
a
Oh, look at that
great
beautiful group
that's
photo
a
and the
great group
cute photo of
photo.
you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
so the guides are amazing, right? So they set us all up. They went up kind of a level, took it going down. And again, this was still, we still had a few more days left of the trip, but this was, remember that first picture where I said we first met, and then here we
You were
are in
all
Machu
spread.
Picchu together. And we were literally, there was one guy who sadly had ruptured his Achilles.
Oh,
I don't know exactly how long before this trip, but he was in a boot and like an immobilizer with his knee at an angle and had like kind of like a peg holding it up and walking sticks. I mean, we were cheering him on. There was somebody else that had like a cane. Like, we were all just rooting for each other, and just, it was such a sense of accomplishment. Here we are, and just having so much fun together, and so, I think that's just the magical picture that sums it up.
nice. What was the biggest highlight for you, Karen? The thing that just stands out as being kind of the best experience that you had.
I'm going to have to say Machu Picchu Day. And, that's because there's so many pieces. I would never have wanted to do that without the adventure guides. Even after all the hiking we did in Machu Picchu, then we had a great lunch available to us, and then we have to get back, right? So, um, just having all of um, that process, with that high touch service, but also having our Peruvian guides told the story of Machu Picchu and of, the Incan culture and the Spanish conquest, and even how all of that ties into modern day Peru and their own families. you know, if you don't go, you're not going to just get that from anybody. That Disney really vets their guides well. And, having a multi day experience with the guides is different than being with a guide for, oh, can I see this guide for this site, and this guide for Machu Picchu. They weave information in, so it becomes like, oh yeah, you mentioned that. Like, I remembered that my guide had grown up in a town called Lake Titicaca in Peru. And then when I was in the market, there were these wheels of cheese with like this green reed wrapped around it. And she said, "Oh, it's from Lago Titicaca." And I was like, "I know that place now." You know,
Oh, I love
And I went
that.
to Rudy
Yeah.
and I said, "Rudy, the cheese is from your town." And he's like, "What?" So it's just these really little moments that are hard to describe. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Well,
love
it
that. I
sounds
love
like an amazing, amazing, amazing trip. So
Oh my god, I'm so jealous. Karen, do you think that an itinerary like this, like, would be family friendly? Of course, this is the adult exclusive version, but do you think that this is one that obviously not a family with very little kids, and I tend to try to remind people that Adventures by Disney is not for the families with toddlers. It's the families with like
Correct.
older kids. Older elementary is okay, but probably middle school and older is kind of probably a better target for those. But it is still family friendly. I'm just wondering if you think this itinerary would be a good one for a family.
Absolutely. And we have sent families with actually one of our first ABDs was to Peru that we sold as a travel agency was to a family heading to Peru with a 5-year old. And apparently they did great. I guess sometimes these little kids, their center of gravity is different than ours. So, them running up and down the stairs and the hillside and all that. And, no telling about how altitude is going to hit. But I do think it's really family friendly. I mean, what child would not love those alpacas?
Right.
Um, really, really approachable food,
Mm.
very active, so the kids are never having to sit still through boring lectures. There's fresh air, there's a lot of good activities, a lot of fun things, really great hotels with pools. So I think it can be a good fit. You just, as always, have to know your family. But one of the great things is Peru is on Central Time Zone. So even though it's a big trip to get there, the time change is minimal. So, in some ways it could be easier than going to Europe. So, it's something to
Oh,
keep in
that's a
mind.
great point. Yeah,
I
and
did
it's not museums and stuff like you might museums and churches like you might
Right.
do in Europe. So,
I
yeah.
did
Right.
I did
Right.
take a quick look at the Adventures by Disney website, and for this trip, the minimum age is 6, according to their website. They recommend 8, which is not surprising, but
That makes sense. Yep.
there you go. I mean, they're saying kids as young as
Well,
6.
and a lot of
Yeah,
yeah. A lot of their itineraries have, minimum and then the recommended. I tend to find everyone I've looked at, the recommended is always 8 and up, even if the
Yeah.
minimum age is lower than
Yes.
that, but yeah.
Right. And they've sometimes they tweak it, like River Cruise used to be I think originally it was 7, and then they moved it down to 4 or 5. And sometimes year to year, based on customer guest feedback, they tweak. Um,
Mhm.
but I think the most important thing is, of course, you have to meet the minimum. If you're in between that minimum and recommended, then it's just really important to think about who are you traveling with, what's the temperament of your child, where are you going, all those kinds of great things.
Right. And not even if the recommended is 8, not every 8-year-old's probably a fit for this trip either. So you gotta kind of know, like you
Exactly.
said, know your family. Okay, I wanna ask
Exactly.
one last question, Karen, before we wrap up, and tell folks what's coming next week. But my last question is, what's the next ABD that you're headed on? We know you're headed on a
Oh,
previous cruises. We know you're headed on the maiden voyage of the Destiny with us, but what's the next ABD you're headed on?
well, I feel like that's a trick question, Sam. I don't actually have an ABD planned right now,
Oh my
personally.
god. I
Very
feel like your food
sadly.
goes in all of them, yeah.
Very sadly, I don't have one planned at the moment. What I have my eye on is the new Greece itinerary. What I
Mm.
also have my eye on is the Holland and Belgium DCL Duo Podcast Cruise 2.0 in July of 2026. Um, but there's just so many amazing ABDs. And we just keep hearing great client feedback from all of them. So um, I don't have one planned yet, but I will
Alright.
soon.
It's a great reminder and a great plug that if you want to try Adventures by Disney but you're a little nervous about it, we've got a nice little group cruise planned to ease you into the concept of ABD, a nice little river cruise. So it's a good way. Come with us and experience our second Adventures by Disney, and we'll help you along the way. So
Yes, and
reach out to Karen and My Path Unwinding Travel if you're interested there. I'm not sure what the availability is like on that cruise any longer. I haven't kept pace, but if there's rooms available, I'm sure Karen would be more than happy to book you into one. So
yes, and
Absolutely. Reach out. We're going to have a lot more coverage from My Path Unwinding this week, like kind of with more day by day of what we did in Peru. We also have the Adventures by Disney and National Geographic Facebook group that you can join. So, lots of opportunities to get connected with us about ABD.
awesome. And if folks want to book something or reach out directly to Karen, you can, of course, reach her at DCL Duo at mypathunwinding.com, or you can go to mypathunwinding.com/DCL Duo. All right. Well, we will be back next week. We are going to be joined by our friend Tinfoil Mouse Ears, also known as CT, and also our friend Wes, the DCL Dude. So we are going to be doing, of course, another podcast crossover. We know you guys out there listening and watching love when we have Wes and when we have CT on. So we're going to be doing a crossover episode. We're going to be talking all about what we're going to expect and what we're excited for on the Disney Destiny. So we'll be back at our regular time. That's 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern next Monday. And for everybody out there, have a wonderful, safe, happy Halloween this Friday. Don't forget to check your candy.
and let's all keep the folks in Jamaica in our thoughts
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
as the hurricane rolls through. It will thankfully looks to be missing Florida entirely, but they're going to take a brunt of a Category 5 hurricane out
Uh,
there. So
and they've been
yeah,
having just a rough go of it with all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
with that,
Well,
thank you,
anyway,
everybody.
thanks everyone. Have a wonderful week and have a
Thanks.
happy Halloween.
Bye, everybody.